This weekend, hundreds of protesters attempted to storm Baghdad's heavily fortified Green Zone, which houses foreign embassies and the seat of Iraq's government. The move comes following reports of the burning of a Quran by an ultra-nationalist group in front of the Iraqi embassy in Copenhagen. The protesters were pushed back by security forces who blocked the bridge leading to the Green Zone. Now, this prevented them from reaching the Danish embassy early Saturday. The attempted storming comes just a few days after protesters, angered by the planned burning of the Islamic holy book in Sweden, stormed the Swedish embassy in Baghdad. For many, the events that have transpired here feel similar to the outrage that was sparked in what was known as the Danish cartoon controversy. Now, this was where the publications of depictions of the Prophet Muhammad caused violence around the world in 2006. Well, joining us now to discuss the balance between toleration and the right to free speech is journalist Flemming Rose. He was the culture editor of the Danish newspaper at the center of the cartoon controversy that took place 17 years ago. Mr. Rose, thanks again for joining us today on Forum Daily.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Now, some people are warning that the response to the original Quran protest in Sweden and the burning of the Quran in Denmark could violently erupt the same way as the cartoon crisis that you were involved in. So do you share that view, and how do these two situations compare to each other from your personal perspective?
Well, I think it depends, but I also think it's important to bear in mind that back then, 18 years ago, all the violence transpired in countries that do not respect the right to freedom of expression. In fact, back then, there was no violence in Denmark and other Western European countries, while all the violence transpired in countries where the state do not respect the right to freedom of expression or the right to publish the kind of cartoons we published back then. But I think the key factor here is the domestic political situation in these countries. Back then, we now know that the main driver, in fact, was at the domestic political situation in Egypt, where you had an election coming up, the Palestinian territories, where you also had an election coming up, Nigeria, where you for many years had a conflict between Christians and Muslims, and this issue somehow became part of that conflict. So I think it very much depends on what is going on inside in these countries. And also today we don't have Western military forces in the Muslim world as we did back in 2005, 2006.
Some very interesting points there, sir. Now, another thing to consider would be the burning of a holy book of a particular religion is quite the statement to make, right? And described by many as an act of religious hatred. So do you think the burning of the Quran or the desecration of this holy book is maybe a step too far when it comes to exercising freedom of speech?
Well, I mean, personally, I don't praise these kind of actions, and I would not do it myself. And it triggers very different associations in my part of the world, burning of the book and publishing cartoons. It's very different associations, but I think it has to, we have to look at the context. In fact, last year, you had 2 Iranians being hanged for promoting atheist ideas, and among them, in fact, burning the Quran. And if you take victims of the 9/11 terrorist attacks in 2001, if I was one of the victims or one of the loved ones left behind, I mean, and the terrorists justified their attack with references to the Quran, would it be all that strange as some kind of protest to burn a copy of the Quran to show your condemnation of these terrorist attacks? And that's why I think you really have to look at the context every time. I agree that today's context in Denmark and Sweden, I think these people, at least some of them, they just want to get attention, and they are they are bigots in the sense that they are against Islam and Muslim communities in Denmark. But I don't think that you can make an overall statement that in any case it's an act of religious hatred to burn a book.
All right, sir, a quick 30 seconds left here, but where do we draw the line between being able to speak our minds while also respecting other cultures in this interconnected world of ours?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people think there is a tension between tolerance and free speech. And in fact, it's exactly the other way around. Tolerance means the ability to live with things that you hate. So tolerance, in fact, implies the ability in a society to let people say things that you hate and you don't like. And among them also, every now and then, burning a copy of a book that you hold dear.
All right, Mr. Rose, thanks again for joining us and sharing your perspective and your opinions on this issue. Thank you.
My pleasure.